Could one of the most recommended nutrients for gut health actually be making gut symptoms worse? One of the most common pieces of health and fitness advice is to increase your fiber intake. And in many cases, that comes from a good place with good intentions. But there are certain cases and situations where more fiber can add insult to injury. Welcome to SIMILARScience, where you're joining me nearly 2 decades into my personal journey to bridge the gap between macros, metabolism, muscle, and medicine. If you're joining me, thanks for trusting me to elevate your health and realize your true potential. Each week and inside every episode, I'll be sharing methods and models from my coaching journey and my personal experience, as well as the science that you need to achieve whatever specific goals you're working on in your life. Let's jump in to today's show. Inside today's show, we're going to walk through a couple points and instances where fiber can sometimes make gut issues worse. The first situation is consuming large doses of single source isolated fiber, but specifically from processed foods versus single ingredient whole foods. This can potentially violate multiple rules of thumb. One, individuals may be getting too much fiber from one source, but 2, they're just getting too much daily fiber as a whole and may not have built up a tolerance to that intake. These days, there are a considerable number of foods that have low carb branding, high fiber branding, or they market with net carbs. This was even more popular a number of years ago. And even things like protein bars maybe have anywhere from 8 to 10 and sometimes even 15 grams of soluble corn fiber as the main fiber source. Other low carb bars, ice creams, and different sweet products, or basically dessert foods that have fiber added in, will sometimes have these types of fibers as well. There's also things like low carb rolls, low carb wraps, and low carb breads that may have things added back in outside of the flour and basic ingredients to make bread. For example, a certain popular low carb tortilla wrap has 15 grams of fiber purely from resistant wheat starch, which can be irritating to some people. It's not that these are bad for everyone or that you can't ever have these as like a one-off inclusion in your diet, but if someone is eating these foods on a daily basis, for example, they're having a protein bar with added fiber from the manufacturer, a low carb wrap at 8 to 15 grams of wheat resistant starch, and then they have high amounts of other food fibers as well, you might start running into issues. And that doesn't mean that the fiber from their blueberries were the problem. It could just be from some of these snack foods and added ingredients. Stacking those when you're eating fruits and vegetables could easily put someone at the 60 gram plus range of fiber per day, which could be too much for someone, especially smaller individuals or individuals on lower caloric intake. I don't want you to think that high doses of supplemental fiber like psyllium husk or partially hydrolyzed guar gum or apple pectin are bad. These are proven to help in digestion in many cases, whereas the other sources of fiber are mainly included in products to make it more palatable, to improve the texture or consistency of that food. So if the sort of behavior describes you, or maybe any clients that you work with, and someone's having gut issues, a good step would be to decrease the amount of processed fiber that's coming into the diet that's kind of added into food ingredients or multi-ingredient foods. The next major issue with added fibers and just certain fiber-based ingredients is going to be when those foods contain FODMAPs. FODMAPs stand for fermentable oligomonosaccharides and polyols, and the foods that are rich in these FODMAPs include things like garlic, onions, artichoke, asparagus, some legumes, wheat-based products, and any lactose-containing dairy products. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it gives you a general idea of certain foods that may be irritating to some people. For some clients, these fermentable fibers are great for the gut and can feed good bacteria. But in people with existing gut issues, especially if someone's struggling with looser stools or has diarrhea-dominant IBS, these types of fibers could potentially be making symptoms worse. The leading hypothesis here is if someone is reacting poorly to FODMAP-containing foods, it's likely they have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or another problematic overgrowth that the FODMAPs, basically these foods, these fermentable carbohydrate, end up feeding instead of the good gut bugs. So figuring this out could be as simple as correlating symptoms with a food log. So basically keeping a food log or dietary tracking along with symptom tracking at the same time with biofeedback, or trialing a period of FODMAP removal for 2 to 3 weeks to see if it makes a difference. Now you would need to include multiple foods being eliminated there that potentially have those FODMAPs. If removing these FODMAPs makes a difference, then we'd want to keep them out for a longer period of time before reintroducing them. This might be 6 to 8 weeks on average, but understand that the severity of your symptoms and the duration of symptoms that you've experienced prior to this food removal is going to impact your overall speed of this process. Now, moving on to the next point related to fiber and GI irritation or GI issues. If you or your client has ever experienced constipation and you've tried mixing and matching fiber types, and you've tried supplemental fibers like psyllium husk or apple pectin, or even other potential supplements that have fiber in them, it might be worth trying a lower or zero fiber diet for a period of time. I know that sounds extreme and a little crazy, but a study published in World Gastroenterology actually shows this very well. 63 patients with constipation who had tried supplemental fiber in the past were divided into 3 groups: a zero fiber group, a low fiber group, and the control group, where they continued eating the same amount of fiber that they were already eating coming into the study. Before starting the intervention, all participants were using the bathroom 1 to 2 times per week on average, which is how you would define clinical constipation. And after the intervention, those in the zero fiber group were going once per day. Those in the low fiber group were going once every 2 days, and those that remained on a higher fiber diet were really only going once per week. Remember, clinical constipation is typically defined as going less than 3 times per week. For some people, low motility is the main cause of their constipation, and adding bulk to the stool doesn't necessarily increase motility. This could be due to a general imbalance in the gut, some sort of other gut overgrowths, which is not allowing the gut to produce enough serotonin, and serotonin is actually the major controller of motility in the gut. Hey everyone, if you're listening to today's episode or you regularly find value in the content, if it's educational, entertaining, or changes your perspective about certain health topics, the greatest compliment that you could give my team and I is a rating and review. Also, sharing the show with any friends or like-minded potential listeners who might benefit from the content that we share here. My team and I invest loads of resources into producing this production for you every single month without the influence of outside sponsors who potentially could negatively influence the education and type of content that comes straight from me to you. A lot of podcasts in the health and fitness space, every 5 minutes you're having to hear about a different product or commercial or supplement that you're supposed to buy or something you need to put in your house. And that's not the way that it is here. My team and I bring you the latest and most relevant health information to support you as you work towards your goals. Or if you're someone who's a health and fitness professional and you coach others, you can take this directly back to your business for clinical application or even in the content that you share. So help us continue the ripple effect of this health information by sharing it and supporting it with that rating and review. Without further ado, let's jump back into today's podcast. So by reducing fiber to zero for the time being, and remember, this is short term, just to get back on track, you can attack other root causes, things like chronic stress, get the client moving their body more, maybe even attempting an elimination diet to see if there's any other irritants that are causing decreased gut serotonin production. But stress, sleep, and movement will be key, maybe even backfilling certain micronutrients and supporting that person during that time, maybe strategically using some probiotics or motility promoting foods. Even golden kiwi has some great research in terms of supporting motility. It's high in serotonin content, or maybe including some motility supporting supplements alongside this intervention. We might be able to get the client eating more fiber again and reap benefits instead of consequences and constipation. This episode isn't about demonizing all fiber. And in general, a diverse array of fiber sources for most people can be extremely beneficial, but it needs to be coming from the right sources. If some of these situations I described or different contexts in terms of symptoms ring true for either you or anyone that you work with or someone in your life, you may want to try some of the strategies that I mentioned inside today's show. The first thing is we want to make sure that when we're consuming foods, especially processed foods, some of these are pumped with single fiber ingredients that are designed to either improve the texture of the food, make it more filling, maybe change the consistency, or just improve the macro profile and make it seem like it has less net carbs. That doesn't mean it's necessarily good for you. There's also FODMAP-containing foods that can exacerbate gut issues. And in some instances, we may even benefit from a lower fiber or zero fiber diet for a very short period of time for people who have constipation issues that has not responded to adjustments in fiber intake, or where people have increased their fiber intake. So let's say fiber has gone up and constipation symptoms didn't improve. You could always do a trial elimination. So this isn't about being anti-fiber. It's about not overshooting fiber or having the wrong types of fiber in the day-to-day. Millions of Americans and people in the Western world don't get enough fiber, polyphenols, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals in their diet. And this isn't about demonizing fiber for those people. It's about helping individuals who have severe gut issues or they think that they're doing the right thing by consuming more fiber, but it's making their symptoms worse. This is a smaller subset of the population, but if you've ever experienced gut issues that have been debilitating or wreak havoc on your quality of life, you can understand that it's important to manage this to get back on track with your health and fitness so that you're not suffering each day with your digestion. So this isn't anti-fiber, it's just finding the right dose and the right types for the right people and knowing how certain FODMAP-containing foods and potentially added fiber sources like protein bars, low-carb tortillas, and even different powdered supplements may potentially be making the issue worse. If you enjoyed today's episode and you're a big fan of all things gut health, hormones, metabolism, and just learning about the body and physiology, please support the show by leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen. If it's changed your perspective, provided entertainment or education in any way, doing this helps us to find more like-minded listeners like you. Since 2019, when I started the podcast, people have shared the show organically, and that's probably how you found us in the first place, whether it was someone sharing directly, posting on social media, or their rating and review helped to trigger the algorithm so that you found the content as well. My team and I produce this content specifically for you so that you can change your life, your health, and the people you work with if you're a health and fitness professional. And we just ask that you help us continue that ripple effect of the work that we do here by sharing this with a friend. You can also tag me on social media. I'm at sammillerscience on just about every major platform. Thanks so much for tuning in today in this episode all about gut issues and fiber. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you in the next show.